All right, you guys, welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Online Prosperity Show, the show where we unpack real stories behind success you cannot maybe shortcut to. You really have to go through. So if you've ever felt awkward in maybe sales or in a sales conversation, or maybe you've ever felt you've over-explained yourself or undercharged, or maybe you're avoiding negotiating your own true worth, this episode is definitely going to hit home. I'm your host, Prosper Taruvinga, and today we're going to be diving into the psychology of influence, communication, and confident selling. So wherever you're watching, remember, this is the number one place to find exclusive insights into the tools, the strategies, and the mindsets that are used by world-class communicators and sales professionals. So wherever you are, make sure you hit that subscribe button and never miss the ideas that could actually change your income, relationships, and confidence if only you knew how to communicate. Now, guys, today I'm really excited because we are joined by Brandon Yager, the founder of Yager Training and Master NLP Coach, who helps entrepreneurs master the high stakes of conversations and so that they can negotiate like pros and sell with confidence. Obviously, without feeling pushy, fake, or uncomfortable. Now, Brandon, welcome to the show.
Prosper, thank you for having me. This is going to be fun. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. I absolutely love what it is that you are all about, because at any given moment, we are always selling. We're selling ourselves in order for us to execute on certain things. So I can't wait to see what you've mastered along the way and how you're utilizing sales as a strategy that people can actually be doing have a happier existence. Now, I also got to say, Brandon, you are teaching people to negotiate like champions, but you've also admitted that the one person you still can't out negotiate is Deb. How's that so?
Yeah, it was quite the sale. So we actually met in an NLP training in 2013. So we've been together for going on 13 years this year. And I just gotten out of an unhealthy relationship. I was there to focus on my real estate business. I wanted to be a better leader to people. And I had hit my glass ceiling that so many people do in business, career. And I hired a coach, Rhonda, and she said, "You need to take these trainings." She's like, "You're fine. Your business is doing actually pretty good." She opened up her business in a box to me and she said, "Brandon, you're the problem in your business." And that really kind of in my early 20s smacked me upside the head, metaphorically what I needed. I got into business at 18. I had a lot to learn, a lot to uncover about myself. I had to unlearn my relationship with money from my parents and my father especially. And it kind of like basically backtracking to the second grade. I got held back in the second grade, my twin sister and I. So I think that really propelled me, that put that chip on my shoulder to want to be so much better than I was. And we kind of have two totally different stories of how two humans could be 5 minutes apart from each other and just completely handled that situation differently. I put the chip on my shoulder, wanted to compete, wanted to beat a lot of people in sports, and that really propelled me, kind of gave me my drive. My sister kind of took it in, really hurt her self-esteem and her confidence. And then fast forward to 11 years old is when I saw my father get fired from the corporate world. And I really saw him struggle. And I thought, if that's what working for a company for 35 years does to someone, I recognize that he didn't have the tools to sell himself. He didn't have the tools to communicate and really negotiate his value and his worth. I see this in so many entrepreneurs, corporate professionals that leave the corporate world that come into entrepreneurship for themselves. They want to build a business, but we forget the one thing, our gift is sales. Because if we don't have any customers, it doesn't matter how good we are doing what we're doing. If we cannot sell our value, our worth, and put people into some kind of a business process. So that's kind of my upbringing. And in real estate, I actually got started just pure cold calling. At 18 years old, you could probably imagine I didn't have a lot of fear. I just cold called, and right after I got my real estate license, I asked my sales manager, it's like, "So how do I make money doing this?" And he's like, print out a huge stack of leads, and I just start calling zip codes for sale by owners and owners that own multiple properties. And so I just really cut my teeth there, getting hung up on hundreds of times before I realized that it was all about how you take rejection and not getting down. And it's the recovery strategy with sales, because a lot of people, that's one of their biggest fears, is getting hung up on or taking rejection. It's one of those things that NLP has massively helped me with, to reframe those kinds of situations and problems in my life. That's probably the biggest thing I see coaches, practitioners. We help a lot of health practitioners, doctors, and business owners, entrepreneurs. It's really, when you get kicked down, how quickly do you get back up and do it again?
Absolutely. And thank you so much for taking us through all of that, because it does really paint a really good picture. I mean, you're actually watching your dad lose his job. That automatically puts you in a position of, wait a minute, something's got to change. But tell us what life was like. I mean, obviously, so that we can paint a picture of the prior 12 years, if you can still remember moments when, what was your relationship with dad like, and what were you sort of seeing in him? Because most kids see their dad as their hero, right?
Oh yeah, my dad and I had a great relationship. I mean, I'm so grateful for my father. He gave me such an incredible work ethic, Kansas farming boy. We came from a background of farmers, so hard work and the ethic of working hard was completely installed in me. Born on the East Coast of the US and then migrated to California. And I saw my dad instilled so many incredible, like, he taught me hunting, fishing, camping, outdoors. Like, I just loved everything. Taught me how to woodwork, and it really prepared me to be able to handle construction. And that's one reason why I think I got into real estate, was very much because my father, when it came to construction, I loved working with my hands. When it came to remodeling houses and fixing up houses, I got into real estate because we had gone around together, my grandfather and my dad, to some of these seminars that you learn how to flip homes or buy rental properties. And that it was just one of those things that I loved doing that with my dad, actually. He never had the risk to buy a property other than the one he owned. That was something that he just couldn't stomach, that risk. Very much a corporate guy, not quite the entrepreneur. And so grateful for everything he taught me, but I'm probably even more grateful for the things he didn't teach me, which was the things I learned on my own: sales, negotiation, real estate, health. I mean, my wife and I met, we really, just a very high value is our health. It doesn't matter how much money you make. If you can't get out of the house or get out of the bed, then you're not having a life of enjoyment. And so you got to have fun along the way as well. And that's something I had, this stewardship of appreciation for land and real estate. I had a goal early on that I actually just accomplished a few years back, was buying a ranch. We bought a ranch in Texas. And it's just one of those things where the drive, if it's not there, it's like, find your why, because there's so many people that probably don't know exactly what their mission, their purpose is. And I had that at a very early age. And somebody that I also owe a lot of that mentorship is my grandfather. So my mom's dad, about the time my dad lost his job, he started my brother and I on 30 minutes a day mentorship. And he basically coached us 30 minutes a day, read just like the back of your bookshelf, lots of books. He would mail books to my brother and I, articles. We'd listen to cassettes. We'd watch VHS tapes of Tony Robbins, Zig Ziglar, Jim Rohn, Brian Tracy, like all the greats. He just installed that at a young age. And my grandfather was such a brilliant man because he was a corporate guy, and we come from a background of PhDs and masters. But he said, Brandon, you're going to have to always invest in yourself. That's what he installed in my brother and I. And he said, no matter whether you choose to go to college or not, college alone will not be enough to be successful in life. And he was so spot on with that, because as soon as I got through high school, I had the opportunity to go to college and play play volleyball. And I just thought, I don't want to put my parents through this incredible amount of debt. I was so hungry to make money. Like, I had this drive to make money because I saw my dad probably struggle for a good decade. And, that struggle, it's like he had the job and then he didn't. And that struggle was such a beautiful piece. Like, it gave us contrast, definitely gave me contrast. And so I was unconsciously, I kind of knew at some point I was going to probably have to take care of my family. And that was a big thing for me. I wanted to provide for them. And I kind of saw this contrast of struggle. And I was like, I got into real estate to make a lot of money, to create clients and serve them at a deeper level. But I knew that I needed to learn skills that my dad didn't have when he struggled in his own business. So once he left the corporate world, he started his own farming consulting company. And because I saw that struggle, it's like it's what really drove me. And I think for a lot of business owners, entrepreneurs, like that struggle is great. That mess is your message. There's always a gift amongst the garbage. And now that I'm coaching entrepreneurs and consulting different small businesses as a leader, it's like some people run from their story, but I'm like, put your story front and center. Like that is the most important thing that so many people, because they feel like they haven't completely broken through the baggage, they're afraid to tell their story. That's what I find mostly with practitioners and entrepreneurs. They're like, well, who am I to go out there and tell others how to build a business or make money or serve people at a deeper level if I haven't completely created the success in my life? And that's the opposite way to look at it, because you don't create success unless you get out there and do. And that taking action piece is something that I think so many people struggle with because of fear, imposter syndrome, perfectionism, failing to launch, fear of success, fear of failure. It's a major thing that we help people come overcome.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for obviously relaying this part of your journey, because it does really paint the picture of the influences that you had growing up. I mean, obviously, growing up, your dad would have taught you all that resilience, the farming, the hunting, and all those things that would have actually taught you to be strong mentally, physically, and everything else that came along with it at such a young age. Plus, he also then later on, like you said, provided the lessons of you watching what you did not want to become. And I think not a lot of people are exposed to that enough for them to have an understanding of what to work towards. So when you saw that happening to dad for a decade, like you said, he lost his job and he was trying really hard to, get back on his feet and everything else. Where did that place you in terms of, obviously you had seen him as your hero, but now you're seeing him struggling, and half of the time it really gives us a distorted view of what masculinity should be, especially at such a young age. And you said you knew you didn't want that path, but what did the new path look like for you?
Well, I mean, as soon as I graduated high school, it was honestly, my grandfather gave my brother and I a ticket to go down to see Jim Rohn in Southern
Right.
California, the main event. And that was that instant moment. I remember waking up super early. It was just him and I, Jim Rohn, Keys to Success. I love it.
I love
Jim
it.
Rohn, man, he's still, to me, he's probably one of my top, all the things I've read, the books and everything. He's just a brilliant mentor, right? He was Tony Robbins' mentor. And I woke up early to this real estate guy's radio show. I don't even know if they're still around, but I go, I want to get into real estate. And I made that decision to right after that event to get my real estate license. And then, that's when I got my license just a few months later after I graduated. And, I was put on the path, and I think I'm super grateful for my grandfather and I'm grateful for my dad, because it was kind of like, it's very much like Robert Kiyosaki's Rich
Yeah.
Dad, Poor
Reach
Dad.
that boy, dad.
It was kind of like that. Like his story is very similar. It's like, Dad, I saw money, then I didn't see money, but then my grandfather kind of lifted us up. And just having the mindset of unwinding these, deprogramming these beliefs, I realized my dad struggled with very traditional type of business. The old handshake, he ran from contracts. Like he did not want to get farmers to sign contracts. And so I saw these little patterns, how it affected his business because of boundaries, getting people to commit, and he just created limitations for himself that I was like, that's not a limitation for me. I don't see how that's a limitation. And so many business owners, entrepreneurs do this is, they think they've got to focus on operations in the spreadsheets. Yes, that's important, but none of that matters if you don't have any clients coming in the door. I mean, the most, I think, underrated skill set someone has is how we effectively communicate our value to our customers and prospects. And that was the biggest thing I realized is like, if you can learn to sell, if you can learn to communicate, and you can erase your limiting beliefs, your false beliefs around money, around charging what you're worth, which is what so many practitioners struggle with. If you get into coaching, facilitation, consulting, it's all you. You're selling you, and people have a problem selling you because they left the corporate world for many, and then they go to business for themselves and they're like, oh wow, like the corporate world's not selling for me anymore, like I have to do that. And the sky's the limit. You can charge whatever you know you're worth if you can deliver quality value and you can solve people's problems. And many times what people don't realize is the bigger the problem, the more you can solve to accomplish that problem, to solve the problem,
Mm.
and so many people struggle with that. And yet it's like this most simplest thing to just unpack why we believe what we do. Because I believe 90% of beliefs is what drives us. Our values, our habits, our behaviors, it's all unconscious. It's the subconscious mind. So the 95% of us runs us. So if we had a poor upbringing and we let that affect us, then we're going to go out there into the real world and we're going to struggle to charge what we're worth. Because like I remember the first time I bought a brand new car in 2005. I had closed a couple real estate deals and I just, paid cash for this car. And my dad, I pulled up in this, and it was a Ford 500. It was a sedan. It was nothing fancy. My dad's like, "What do you think? Money grows on trees?" And I was like, "Yeah." I was kind of pissed for a minute. I was like, "Thanks, Dad." Like, love the support. But it was like, yeah, money does grow on trees. Money is a tool. And if you learn how to wield the tool with honesty and integrity, you can make a lot of money serving people.
Mm.
I fell out of love with real estate because I wanted to serve people in all areas of life. And once I got into, taking all these NLP trainings, within the first event, I realized, wow, how unconscious I was, unaware of my money story. And it was because of dad. It was because of mom. And we're not blaming them. I'm grateful because what it did is it gave me this ability to see, oh, that's not the way I want to run my business or my life. And that's what we all are grown up with that. And I think people don't realize you can love your parents, but that doesn't mean you have to adopt their limitations, their scarcity. And we
Mm.
adopt scarcity by nature of being around our family. So we get scarcity from school, from programming. I mean, there's a societal scarcity around that money's not enough. You got to work hard for it, all of these limitations. And it's not true. They're total illusions. And so after my
Mm.
first NLP training, I realized, wow, I've got a lot more scarcity than I realized. I didn't have fear to go out there and make sales calls and go knock on doors doing real estate at a young age. But what I did have was the limitations of realizing I would make a lot of money and then I wouldn't be able to keep it. And that was one of my biggest limitations. And then once I became a broker, I realized growing my team, I was like, nobody wants to work hard. And so a big limiting belief was nobody wants to work hard anymore. And so I had to look myself in the mirror and be like, why am I hiring people that are not committed to making more money? Like, where is it in me that I'm attracting these people to show me my areas of growth? And that's really what we help people do is see the shadow aspect. Because if you can learn from your shadow, you can start to really create a life of just complete success. And most people, what they do is they point the finger, they blame. And I remember my first NLP training, I realized, oh my gosh, I'm actually, in effect, I'm blaming others for my lack of success. And that was my
Mm.
biggest thing was taking radical self-responsibility. And one of the first frames we teach in all of our events on a slide is cause and effect. It's a universal law. Are we at cause for everything that we bring into our life, the good, the bad, the different? Or are we blaming others, right? Are
Mm.
we in victim consciousness? And that goes for health, that goes for relationships, that goes for business, and that goes for how we handle our relationship with money. So that was my biggest awakening was like realizing I had to get honest with myself, look in the mirror, because my lack of success was me.
Right.
It's nobody else's fault, right? It was just mine. And within 90 days of taking my first training, I put $100,000 of commissions on in escrow. I'd just gotten out of an unhealthy relationship. She wanted nothing to do with personal growth. So I was like, that's done. That's not going to go anywhere. And then I made a bunch of money because for the first time, I was really clear. I was clear in how I communicated because I cleared out a lot of my baggage, blaming my sister for stuff, resentment, all these things. What we don't realize, it stacks upon. And then before you know it, it's draining us and leaking energy. And so we can't focus on what we know we need to do. That's really what it comes down to.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for that, because the one thing that I'm picking up on that is ownership. When you take ownership of who you are becoming and your actions and things of that nature, then obviously, if you're not going in the direction that you want, you can self correct instead of blaming other people for whatever circumstances that you're in, and looking at your upbringing and things of that nature, you had every right to blame it on your dad, who maybe would not have shown you a better way pretty much after that. But you took ownership on yourself. And like at age 18, you started this real estate business, which went on and did things for you. But I want to come back to the part where you kept noticing these things that you wanted to unlearn. So there's one thing here, Brandon. Fish don't see the water that they swim in. And obviously you were noticing that money was coming in, but it didn't stay. Did you notice maybe at that time, or maybe in retrospect, the beliefs or the habits that were secretly sabotaging you at that particular time? Because so many people might actually be doing well. And like, as you said, but the money is coming in and they have got nothing to show for it.
Absolutely. Well, that was the benefit of hiring a coach, Rhonda. So my first 5 years in real estate, I hit an early level of success, but then I couldn't break through this $500,000 mark. And I was like, I want to make $1 million. Why can't I'm like, I'm setting my goal at a 500,000. I'm falling just short of that. And she lovingly called me out. That is the reason why you hire a coach, because I would have spun my wheels, probably wasting another 3 or 4 years. And she's like, you're telling yourself a story. And she was right. She literally called me out in so many of my little patterns and behaviors that were just subconscious. By the way, this woman was making 20 million a year. So when I paid her this huge fee to coach me, and I had no idea where the money was, but I figured a way how to do it. And I think so many people think they can't go hire someone that's doing so much better than them, because she was. And I really trusted her. I really respected her. She had 105 people on her team. And I was like, this woman is doing something incredible. Like, she leads, she communicates differently. Everything was different about her. And I'd never had a mentor at that level, specifically in the field of real estate. And what I thought I was getting was a bunch of real estate coaching, but I really got performance, high performance coaching from her, how to be a better leader. And whether you think you're a coach or you're not, whether you're a facilitator, a consultant, or you call yourself like a high performance coach or a trainer in the corporate world, you are a coach to yourself first. And that is the reason why the value of hiring a coach is so beneficial, because she just shined this spotlight on that dark area that was so out of my awareness that you can't not look at that stuff and get honest and say, damn, I'm telling myself a story. Whether it's, what happened was I hired an agent, it didn't work out. And then my story, this happens to a lot of business owners, they go, oh, no one wants to work, right? Or you call 3 leads and they say, you're charging too much, and they hang up, right? And that happens 3 or 4 times. And then you go, oh, there's a story. Maybe my prices are too high. And it's like, or you're just telling yourself a story that you talked to the 3 or 5 wrong leads that weren't leads, they weren't buyers. So you got to keep calling, right? And one thing she taught me a few things, especially in business. The first one is, she said the client is never right. If the client was right, she's like, they would have already sold their house and they would have already solved their problem. And that's like, it's a tough thing to hear, but it's the blunt truth, because people go, the customer's always right. It's like, no, the customer's rarely right. Because if they were right, they would have solved their problem on their own. And that is so backwards the way we think. And she's spot on. And I created a real estate model where I did traditional real estate. And then I created a flat fee model where you could just list your property, pay a flat fee online. And so the second thing she taught me is, everything in business has a process. She's like, Brandon, if you're going to do it once, you need to document this process and you need to lay it out in a standard operating procedure. So then you could put somebody in there in that place. You could teach them and train them exactly what you did and how you do it. And now you've got that process dialed in. And I would say business processes are the things that people really struggle with, because they just micromanage people because they haven't documented anything and made it like a workflow, right? Like a go high level workflow or something like that. And the other thing is volume. Volume solves problems. If you have a money issue, you probably are not doing enough volume. And volume cures that. I mean, will cure your financial problems, because if you only have 5 clients and you're charging X, well, if you raise your prices and you ended up creating 15 more clients, like double, triple, quadruple the size of clients you could work with, you probably either don't have enough processes to handle the volume, or you're simply not charging enough, right? And my model became this discount model. So we charge less for real estate services. So we had to do volume, right? So it really taught me a lot of valuable business lessons in the way she ran her business to get to 20 million.
Absolutely. And if somebody's making that kind of money and is obviously doing well, all you got to do is listen. But this obviously got you thinking a lot different to traditional business, the way
Absolutely.
it's run, right? I mean, obviously, you also did mention earlier on that your dad loved doing the handshake and didn't do contracts and just wanted to do business in the sort of traditional way. What did NLP unlock for you that traditional business training never could?
Well, a great example, I'm glad that you brought that up. It's a great question, Prosper. So my dad, one thing that I consistently saw him doing was when he left the big corporate company with farming and agriculture, he thought he had to be the guy that ran the tractor down the field. And he was very ahead of his time. But
Mm.
he pulled this unit, it's called the Varus, and its conductivity passes between it. And so it would read the soil, the type of soil. So he would basically did variable rate farming. But as an example, he thought he had to be the guy that ran the equipment. I'm like, Dad, you could find a young kid out of college that loves agriculture that you could pay 15 bucks an hour. This is 25 years ago or more. And then the data would come into the computer, and then he could analyze the data, do the review of findings, and then go consult with the farmer. So that's a great thing. Like I just had a call this morning with a practitioner where she's controlling things. The biggest thing is control. And so when I think of traditional business, we try to control so many things that we need to release control on and trust that when you hire a talent, they can do it if you have the process set up. And that was something my dad really struggled with to get out of his own way. I see business owners, they think, oh, I can't afford this. I can't afford to hire anyone. And the reason why they can't afford to hire anyone is because they don't have a process. And if you set the process up, that allows you to focus more time with the client and or go get new clients making sales. And so if your number one job, like 90% of your time in the first, it's still my number one job is sales, even though I have salespeople, but it's like, I mean, promoting the business. Like if you're still not able to make enough sales, that means you're doing jobs and tasks in the business that are not high producing, money producing, client producing tasks. And if you're face to face with clients all the time, then you ought to be asking for referrals. So that is a sale coming in, right? You're asking for referrals because you've given such quality service. And I think that's the biggest thing business owners do is they choke their business because they haven't put they haven't put a process in place, then they haven't put someone in place to run that process. So that, again, you can focus on sales and client deliverables, which is far more important than anything else you could possibly doing. And a lot of people get buried by bookkeeping and the spreadsheets. But now you can hire people, contractors all over the world, that can do stuff for $300 to $500 a month. It's like, so there's really no excuse that we are our own worst enemies when it comes to scaling the business. So many people talk about this, and that's the thing that I think a lot of business owners struggle with, and that's mindset. That's a belief system. That's not because they're not making enough money. They're not making enough money because their mindset won't allow them to release control of, quite frankly, things in the business that are important, but not as important as making money. And the people we learned NLP from, Tad, he passed away in 2020. And he's like, Brandon, you could be the greatest trainer, the best coach in NLP, but if you have no butts in seats doing live events, how good are you? And I was like,
Mm.
damn, that's a really good point. So again, like from real estate sales back to training and coaching sales was like, okay, we need to fill the room because if we don't fill the room, we're not transforming lives, right? And that's again, I think Tony said it best. 80% of business is mindset. And the 20% is like operations, tasks, all the stuff that again you could hire an expert to do once the money's there.
I like that. And I mean, obviously, so many things were said in that sort of response. But what I really caught on there is the work that needs to be done in order for us to have businesses that are profitable and enjoyable. And one thing that you also mentioned was how Rhonda, your coach, right, was one of those people that had a large team and was really good at communication. Now, what I know in life is we only sport things that we already have inherently within ourselves. So the fact that you sported that communication gift, it means you also have that or can enhance on that. So when you discovered your gift of communication, you went on and you started utilizing it, and maybe Deb can actually attest to that. But what is it that separates great communicators and average ones? Because so many people buckle when it comes to putting themselves out there, selling themselves, because they're afraid that rejection, like you mentioned, or I think it was Seinfeld that mentioned some people would rather be the one in the coffin than being the one saying out the eulogy.
No, for sure, especially public speaking. That was Deb's story. She was terrified of public speaking. I didn't have a problem getting up in front of agents talking about real estate, but then I had to break through another layer of fear, talking about personal growth and development, something that I was
Mm.
not comfortable and confident in yet. Step one is rapport. I think a lot of people don't have rapport with themselves and rapport with their audience or rapport with their client, their prospect. And that's rapport is trust. Rapport is awareness. It's a level of vulnerability that gets the client to open up, drop the guard. And so you can get to the questions layered, layering in those questions that can now actually better understand what the client's looking for and how to serve them. And I think a lot of people have more rapport with clients than they think, but then they have a fear, I can't say the wrong thing, or I could never say that, like objection handling skills. If you have enough rapport, you can say anything that's going to move the client forward if you're focused on the client's goals. And that's something I found with coaches is like people would be like, you can say that. I was like, well, you can say anything with confidence if you have rapport and it's for the best interests of the client, right? That doesn't mean the client's right. But if the client says, hey, here are my goals, and I could say, well, here's some things that I see based on what you shared with me. What else is preventing you from accomplishing your goals? And they tell you this and this. Well, if it's mental and emotional versus if it's like an actual physical thing, right? That's getting in the way of their success. And for most people in business, it's a mental and emotional thing. And also, I think we get into business as leaders, we have an ego, or else we wouldn't try to do this on our own. You got to be a little crazy to be in business. Let's be honest. Like, why would I go try to do this whole entrepreneurship thing on my own, versus go get a nice paying six-figure job, six-figure salary plus? Like, you've got to be a little crazy. You got to have the ability to take risks. And so with communication, to me, the one thing I was, even at a young age, even if I didn't know much about real estate, I was confident that I would study and figure it out as I went. And I remember the first time I made a bunch of sales calls and I got a guy on the phone, one of my first clients, and he's like, yeah, I want to list this piece of land, right? It's like a $60,000 piece of land. And I was all excited, ran out there, met him, got the paperwork signed, brought it back to my office. And I was like, what's next? Like, I had no clue of the process. I was literally 18 and a half, going in 19. It was like my first transaction. So every step of the way, I was like, all right, broker, what's next? And he'd tell me, and then I'd go do it, right? And that's like a great client to me is like if they're asking for support, they're asking for help. Number one, you got to reach out and you got to ask for help. If you're spinning your wheels in the sand and you're struggling, how much longer are you going to struggle because you can ask for help? Somebody
Mm.
in your network or reaching out to brilliant business owners, somebody knows the next step to the process. You just have to figure that out. And if you don't know it, then ask. And so I remember I got the listing agreement signed and I brought it back to the office. He's like, now what? And he's like, get the disclosures done. And I'm like, okay, what are those? And then he took me through the checklist, right? And then I'm like, okay, highlighted where the client signs, ran back out there next day, got everything signed, brought it back, right? So it's just like, if you don't know the process, communicate, hey, by the way, I don't know. And I think a lot of people are afraid to say they don't know something, especially when they're learning and they're new to business. So that was the biggest thing for me was I didn't have the fear. And when I look back at so many people getting into business now, or they're getting into coaching, or they're getting into health coaching, facilitation, I see they let a lot of little fears trip them up. And then that fear turns into procrastination. And the reason why they're procrastinating is because they don't know something, or else they would just do it. Most people are pretty intelligent, pretty smart. And now that we got AI and ChatGPT, like you can figure so much stuff out. So when somebody does know the process and they're not doing what they know they need to do to create success, that's an internal thing, right? That's a block. And after I got through my level 2 master practitioner training, I met Deb there. I started really getting good at sales calls. I had an auto dialer. there was months we would knock out 1,500 to 2,000 calls. And there were sometimes weeks that I would knock out almost 1,200 to 1,500 calls in a week because we had so many leads. And I was just ripping through leads. I was ripping through calls. And so I had no fear of rejection. It was now, how do I refine the way I communicate by handling objections smoother, right? And then it became tonality. So rapport is all about how do I speak. A lot of times they say it's not what you say, it's how you say it. And there's a lot of truth to how you speak is the volume, the cadence, the speed, right? If someone comes in a little bit higher volume, you want to match that. And I think a lot of people don't realize they're so unconscious with speech. I know people that break rapport as soon as they shake your hand at a networking event because they shake it really hard and it's aggressive and it's like, whoa, you break rapport at the unconscious level. 95% of our communication at the unconscious level is body language. Body language is 55% of the way we communicate. So that's not just facial expressions, that's posture, that's gesture, that's how we breathe. You can see based on how someone's carrying their body if they're confident. And if they're not confident, they're going to slump. They're going to hide to the world. And so noticing these things from listing appointments to meeting people and going to networking events to now doing trainings and teaching this stuff, it's very obvious why people struggle in sales. And it's because of communication. But what they don't realize, it's how they're communicating with themselves. That's the first person they got to communicate with. And so if they're not confident, and they're going to use unconscious language that is focused on what they don't want. And so if I were to say to you, don't think of a pink rhino, what are you thinking about?
I was gonna go for pink elephant, so that was already in my.
I was going to say pink elephant. I usually do, actually. That's funny. Funny.
You broke my pattern there, you know what I mean? So I was like, okay, now it's a rhino. Now okay.
And that's exactly what people do. We've been trained and we've been programmed from school, from childhood. Mom, dad would say, don't run in the house. Don't play with the pens on the table. Don't break the glasses on the dining room table, right? It's like don't. And so we're programmed to focus on what we don't want. And so people come in, they go, I just need to get a better job. I don't make enough money. I need to get out of debt. Need is a tip off that they're not in control of their behavior. I need to, I must, should, shouldn't, couldn't. These are modal operators of possibility and lack, scarcity. And so we're constantly focused on what we don't want, which creates this inconsistency with our motivation and our drive. And it happens in every industry, and it's all from programming. It's
Mm.
making sense.
Absolutely. And I like that. And speaking of programming, I mean, obviously, this is something that you say you're a level 2 master in NLP and things of that nature. And we spoke about pattern breaks and the needs, the shoulds. I think it's Tony Robbins that said, shoot all over yourself or things of that nature. But I just wanted to posit a question here. Some people would think maybe now that you've got this level of knowledge, and especially with NLP as the baseline of it, it's borderline manipulation. What's the truth that a lot of people misunderstand about this?
It's a great question. What most people don't realize is their subconscious is already manipulating themselves. Their subconscious, because of stories of scarcity, of poverty, of negative emotions, traumas, and dramas, they're already being manipulated by their subconscious. And so if somebody in their outside world feels like they're manipulating themselves, then what that's doing is it's already bouncing up against the boundaries of their own unconscious manipulation. Because you can't recognize something outside of you if you didn't already do it. And so, like, if you give someone a compliment and you're like, man, I really like this person, I aspire to be like them, that's because you're like them. There's something inside of you that is very similar to that goodness, right?
Like you had with Rhonda in communication.
Yeah, I absolutely thought she was just incredible. And I fully hadn't tapped into my voice, to be honest. I hadn't found that confidence in my voice. And the same thing is like, where do others manipulate? And I'll tell you what's happening in society right now is there's so many of us people pleasers. I kind of had to break through my own level of people pleasing. People pleasers probably don't want to hear this, but that's a level of manipulation. If you're people pleasing to make someone feel better, But meanwhile, you're holding in things you didn't say that you wish you said. That's manipulation. Because now you're stuck with this, damn it, I should have said something. I didn't say it in the moment. I wish I said this. I wish I could have done that. And then you beat yourself up, right? Because then you get the negative self-talk in your head and you're like, damn it, right? And you speak negative to yourself, which a lot of men do. A lot of women struggle with the negative internal self-talk. That's some of the biggest stuff that blocks us. That's the reason why 80% of business is mindset. If you're kicking your own ass, who's manipulating who? You're manipulating yourself out of your goals. And the way I look at hypnosis is the same way everything unfolds in our world now on social media and YouTube and the news. Everyone's got an agenda, right? Now you have to seek out the things that fit into your agenda with your goals, your values, and your belief systems. And if it feels good, then do it. If it doesn't, then enforce a boundary and say, no, I don't want to do this thing, right? Or tell this person, hey, I appreciate the offer, but I've got other plans. And so many people don't realize the manipulation is because they haven't cleared out their own story from someone in their life, probably a parent, probably a brother or a sister, who didn't, as brothers and sisters, I mean, I have a twin sister and an older brother, who didn't try to manipulate a younger brother or younger or older sister, right? So manipulation is a story we're telling ourselves. The sooner you release the story, the negative stuff of why manipulation affects you so much, the sooner you'll be able to speak communication and you'll be able to talk with confidence. And when you can speak with confidence, you're not manipulating people because you're like, hey, if this isn't a fit for you, either way, I'm okay. I just want what's best for you. And knowing what I've seen successful people do is those people that make decisions faster tend to create more success, right? And I'm okay if it's a no. And it may be a no now. That doesn't mean it's a no later, right? It could be a yes down the road. Maybe you're truly not ready. Maybe they're not financially in a place to do it. But a lot of people, they have the money to solve the problems, what I've found. I've had people that have told me, Prosper, I had a lady one time, this was a few years ago when we were living in Austin, Texas. She's like, I just can't take this training right now. And level 1 and 2 is like a $12,000 investment. She said, that's a lot of money. I said, I know, but you're looking for massive transformation shifts. And I can assure you with the process in which we handle this training, like you will have breakthroughs because I've seen so many people come through and do this, thousands of people we train now. And she goes, I don't have the money. I said, tell me about how you don't have the money. She goes, Brandon, anytime my account falls below $100,000, so if it's like 99, like, oh no, 200,000. It was anything that falls below 200,000. So she was like in the 180 range, 180K. She thought she tightens the belt. She goes, I don't have any money. That's the story she tells people. And she had a scarcity story. And so what I think is fascinating is people that do have money to solve the problems, they have a problem with the money because they either don't see the value or they don't have clarity in how it's going to actually help them. And some people, once you invest, they expect someone else to solve the problem. But once you invest, that's when the work begins. That's when the rubber meets the road is you got to get tough with yourself and say, hey, now it's the great work. The great work is upon us. Let's take action and do this together. So you have the accountability and you have a team of people helping you. She ended up enrolling because it was fascinating. She realized she was talking herself out of abundance, even when she had a level of resources to solve the
That she
problem
could have used.
and it's like, and if I didn't lean into that money story, which so many people don't, they don't lean into the money story. If I didn't lean into her, she wouldn't have gone through our trainings and gotten transformation. Right. And so I
Mm,
look at that as this is what sales is. Sales to me is just transformation. It's change. If you look at sales as manipulation, then you need to change your story on sales because you can't help anybody if you think you're manipulating them. I don't ever think I'm manipulating anyone because I'm changing someone's views on why they still have problems they can't solve on their own. And I'm trying to teach them tools and techniques and processes that are actually going to build a better life for themselves because now they're going to be self sustainable. And NLP is about self sustainability. Once you learn this, it's kind of like a language.
yeah.
You use it. If you don't use it, you lose it. And that's what NLP, hypnosis, we have this coaching framework. And it's not just for coaches, it's for business owners because a lot of business owners don't think they're coaches. And I'm like, you've got it all wrong. If you don't want to call it a coach, call yourself a leader. But if you're going to be a leader, you got to lead others. but you can't lead others until you lead yourself. And that's what Rhonda taught me. Like, and I realized sitting in my NLP training, I would go, why do they keep calling me a coach? I'm a real estate broker. I'm a broker. I was like, I've got this identity. And then I was like,
Mm,
who cares? That's ego. That's total
mm.
ego. And so people go, but I'm not a coach. Like we had this happen the last event we just finished. Like, does anybody else not want to coach in here? And I was like, cool. Are you a business owner? Yes. I was like, are you a corporate professional? Yes. I was like, do you guys consider yourself leaders? And they were like, yes. I was like, so what's the difference between a leader and a coach? So now I do leader versus coach frame. And I was like, there's very little difference.
Very little difference.
A coach has maybe some processes to actually help a transformation happen in somebody's life, which is an undeniable change. But a leader does the same thing.
Absolutely. Like they say when you're flying, you want to put your mask on first so that you be able to help those. And if you can lead yourself, then that makes it a whole lot easier for you to pass that on to other people. And Brendan, I mean, obviously you and I could go on and talk about stuff, but what I'm actually starting to realize is a thread in your story that obviously there's a time when you introduced us to 12-year-old Brendan who felt powerless just looking at his hero literally crumble in front of him. But now you've become that person who's helping others to use whatever they already have inside of them in order to be to and have a happier existence. And I think you have become that hero that you would have wanted maybe dad to have been maybe for himself there. I don't know how you feel about that, but that's what I'm sort of seeing there. And that being the case, tell us a little bit about how you are helping people realize the strength inside of them that they might have forgotten that they actually do have.
Absolutely. Great. You're really good at this, Prosper. Great question. When Deb and I first got to Austin, Texas, it's almost like we started our whole business over from California. Like I didn't have, luckily I still had the real estate business that I was able to step away with and have it run for me. But we networked our butts off for 2 straight years. So we put the tools and we were a product of what we trained. We were a product of what we were teaching and how we were coaching people. We were learning how to network and build rapport and get up and do a 60-second pitch without any preparation. And what we realized doing around all these networking events, all walks of life, everybody in different industries, was people were like, what are your biggest challenges? They're like, oh my God, when I stand up to my 30-second, 1 minute pitch, whatever it was, they're like, I have such fear and nervousness and anxiety public speaking. I was like, okay, check. What else? Like, oh, I hate sales. I just think it's sleazy and I don't know. I'm never comfortable with it. I don't know what to say. I don't know the sales cycle. I don't have a process. I don't have any help there. Check. And so we built our first 3-day event because people did not like speaking in front of people on stages. They hated sales and they had money stories. They had money baggage, which is why the sales, it's like, I love money, but I hate sales. And so we created our first 3-day conversion event with that in mind. We started getting people enrolling in this event and then we would enroll them into our other packages. And that really showed us the value. People saw Deb and I get up on stage as a wife couple duo we have this double induct where we can kind of talk with each other and it's very effortless. And that's one of our kind of unique gifts as a couple. And we realized that people wanted that. And so we were just a byproduct of people wanted more confidence. They wanted to be able to make more sales and they wanted to be able to talk in front of people, public speaking. And so that's how we created our whole program there. We brought people in and we showed them how to break through the very blocks that was blocking them from creating successful businesses. And most of it was mindset. It's their mindset and the story around money, the story around sales, just like the whole manipulation talk. And what I find too, the people that really feel they're being manipulated the most, which is weird, they're actually doing the most manipulation because they haven't recognized it. It's a fascinating dichotomy. And so we help people dissolve this stuff around sales because manipulation is a thing. And that's not to say people don't manipulate. My gosh, we have a lot of this going on right now on the planet. People of power, right, that are doing manipulation tactics because it's trying to put power over people. And it's not cool. But that's not sales, because sales is what creates such incredible transformation in human beings. And so once we put this training together, we brought business owners together. That's how we built a 7-figure business, was networking alone. We didn't have any Facebook ads. We had no social media. And so then once 2020 hit, we 4X'd our business because we had done so much networking. We just brought the networking to our house. And that's what expanded our business. And so people have to first get aware of their problems to realize these are the problems that are holding me back, but they also have to have the ability to ask for help. And I think so many people think hiring a coach, hiring a consultant, hiring somebody to actually help this, they think, oh, therapy is not for me. But the reality is, we all have baggage. We have subconscious, unconscious baggage, whether it's generational lineage stuff, whether it's this lifetime, or even past lives for some people that believe such things. We've done hypnosis where people will pull up stuff they had no idea they even had. And those stories are the things that subconsciously sabotage their success. It erodes at confidence. It prevents people from making confident decisions. And so for those that are stuck, they're struggling in their business, maybe they're going at it 3 years, 5 years, and like, I should be making more money, right? Maybe they're shaming themselves, feeling guilty that they're not further along the path. That was me in real estate, which is why I hired Rhonda. Those are the kinds of people that, if we can just muster up the bravery and the courage to go out there and do something about it. After I hired Rhonda, within a year is when I hit my first million. And she didn't charge me $1 million. She charged me 25 grand. And so if you ask me, would I pay that again to go hit $1 million? Absolutely. And so people will spin their wheels in the sand trying to do it on their own, do it all alone out of ego, instead of just go hire someone, a good coach that can help them see a new perspective on money, sales, negotiation, building a business, processes, systems. But the problem is, most of us are in our own way. I was in my own way and I hit my glass ceiling. I was in my own way. Rhonda helped me get out of my own way. And then I grew, and then I hit another glass ceiling. And the thing is you're going to consistently hit glass ceilings as you grow. The more you evolve, the more you'll hit obstacles. And so people think it's kind of like school. I think the worst thing they did was, oh, you graduate, you're done learning. It's the opposite. It's why you have all the books behind you, right?
That's when you actually get started.
It's why we're doing this podcast. I'm consistently reading a book every week, right? And we don't stop learning. And so people think the problems eventually stop, and they'll say things like, I've been working on this for years. I've already done so much work. If you've done all this work and the problems still exist,
you wouldn't have this problem.
Then you haven't solved the problem. So do something about actually solving it. And this is where I would rather invest in somebody else's process. If it can save me, there's only one way to buy time. It's hire someone, pay someone, invest in someone to show you what you don't know and where you fall short, because you can buy time. Because if that person can help me solve the problem in 3 months and 6 months or less than a year, and I spend 4 more years trying to solve the problem, I'm going to waste thousands and thousands of dollars. But worst, I can always make more money. You can't get back your time. And what people don't value enough is their time.
Absolutely. Even if you're watching this right now, we started talking about Brandon at age 12. From that time up until now, I think we've maybe spent about 45 minutes talking about that, and we've compressed so much in a short episode plus commercials, and you're receiving so much value, all for obviously free, just your time for you to watch this. Imagine what it would be like if you actually reach out and actually pay for the programs and be a part of what he is teaching there. Now, Brandon, you didn't tell us where people can go to on the internet so that they can actually get started on this journey.
And a great course we have is NLPmadesimple.com. It's an online course to learn more about NLP, and it's a great place to just dip the foot in, start learning. You can book a call. Would love to just to see if we can even help you, but check out NLPmadesimple.com. And then another site is YagerTraining.com.
Absolutely. I'll definitely make sure that all those links are in the show notes below so that people can actually jump on and make use of them. And if you're watching this right now and maybe you're tired of losing opportunities because maybe of these uncomfortable beliefs that you might be holding, I think it's time to actually learn the psychology behind how you operate and just confident communication. And I encourage you to follow Brandon, connect with him, start mastering the conversations that actually shape your income, your relationships, and your future. Because I believe, and if you've heard Brandon clearly, clarity in communication actually creates prosperity in life. Now, talking about relationships, you've obviously introduced a lot of characters, Brandon, in this conversation. Your dad, your granddad, Rhonda, and obviously we haven't really even touched upon Deb. You met her at a training that you actually did, and that's, I think, if we go back into the video, you mentioned her name 4 or 5 times, so it will be apropos to bring her in and just hear a little bit about her side of the story. Now, would you say that personal transformation actually makes you ready to attract better relationships? Because once you knew who you were and you were clear, you literally connected with the one person that you literally can't stop talking about.
Absolutely. Yeah. Right before I met her, I got out of a pretty unhealthy engagement. I was actually engaged for 6 months and gained a bunch of weight with bad habits and a lot of stress. And so, really, I set boundaries in my life that just I started saying no to the things and the people that I knew were not healthy for me. And I think that's a really another tough challenge for people to do is enforce those boundaries, but sometimes even the ones that love you the most, you've got to enforce healthy boundaries so that they don't end up sabotaging your success because there's a lot of unhealthy relationships out there. Deb really, we had to have her on. Like, honestly, let's do another podcast with her, you and I and her. I held space for her and she overcame addiction and drugs and drinking and all kinds of things from her crazy world of living in Las Vegas for a decade. And she did the work though. I just held space for her to be able to heal. And I knew deep down that if I can hold space for her and she does the work and heals, we'll be doing this work together. And I wanted to find my queen, my partner that wanted to build an empire with me around personal growth and development and these trainings and the retreats that we now do. And it is kind of a, I mean, it's a beautiful love story of meeting when she was down and out and I was just getting confidence back and getting to myself. And we just both didn't expect to meet the right people or even meet each other. It was really fascinating that we met in the very event of which we now train and teach these techniques that almost 13 years ago. And we had 2 rough years. It was not like all just gold plates and butterflies and rainbows. It was massive challenges in the way we started to work together to hold space for each other, to allow each other to work on the processes. And really I got to practice with her to help her release her past. And she helped me release my past because we really didn't have any connection to each other from the past traumas and dramas. And she just accelerated so quickly. And she's helped so many women that have overcome, men and women that have overcome any kind of addiction or sexual abuse. It's not talked about enough in our society of how that can pull us down. We see people struggling in business and it has nothing to do with business. It has to do with personal stuff. And I'd say that's part of the reason why so many people struggle in business is they have their personal problems and doubts and baggage and traumas, and they bring that into the business and they expect the business to solve that problem. And it's not a business problem, it's a
Not
personal
a
problem,
business problem.
which is why I think coaching is so important. If you find the right coach and you clear that stuff out, you can very quickly, you can create success in 1 year. We have people within 2 years of doing multiple events with us and coaching one-on-one with different coaches on our team. You can create massive success. I mean, what you would think people could create in 10 years, they could create in 1 to 2 years if they just focus, get committed, and get serious about the growth.
Absolutely. Now, Brandon, I can't thank you enough for the time that you spend with us today. I mean, your life story and your experience have so much value for whoever is listening and watching. And I really hope people are going to click the links in the show notes so that they can actually get to learn a little bit more about what you guys are working on and how you can actually help them live a happier existence. So thank you so much, my man.
Thank you so much, Prosper. Thanks for having me on. This is fun. Let's do it again.
Absolutely. What an incredible journey. I mean, you inherited fear and you intentionally grew, and now you're mastering communication and influence and love of your life. And I think your story just reminds us that conversations that we usually avoid are often the gateways to the life that we actually want. And most of the things that we see in other people are exactly what it is that we already have inside of us. So if this episode made you think a little bit maybe differently about confidence, sales, or communication, I also encourage you to share this with somebody who struggles to speak up for their value, and maybe tag somebody in the comments who actually needs the courage to go through any tough conversations that they might actually need in order to shape and change their life. And don't forget to subscribe so you can never miss out on any of the insights that will help you upgrade your mindset and income. Because in our next episode, we're going to be exploring ideas and perspectives that can help you build a happier existence. I don't know what you're going to do with this information today, but I know that success without fulfillment is just a lot of noise. And I hope this has actually created a space inside of you that you can actually build upon. Until next time, keep growing, keep communicating, and keep owning your power. Bye for now.